You know, sometimes I wonder, I really do, just if there is some kind of limit to the amount of really bad video game based movies that we can get or that the audience can tolerate, or if there's some kind of limit to the amount of failed video game adaptations have to be brought to the big screen before Hollywood decides not to risk their money on it anymore. I mean, is there some kind of limit? Are we going to reach a critical mass where we'll be spared from all these really bad video game based movies? I'm sorry, but on this episode of Rotten Reviews, I'm going to be taking a look at the 2016 film Assassin's Creed. It has an 18% on the tomato meter and a 43% on the audience score. It has 57,264 audience reviews. Not the review count from a Blockbuster, certainly, but quite a relevant number of those user reviews. I have to disagree and say this should be lower on that audience score. This should be around a 23%. That would be a fair number to me. That feels better to me. It kind of makes me feel much better having sat through this whole thing. And when I mean sat through this whole thing, I'm talking about 116 minutes. This is almost 2 hours long, and it really felt like 2 hours long. I don't know that critics say that it's, 18% of the critics have good things to say about this, that they have a favorable review, I suppose. I don't know how it's in the double digits. It should be in the single digits. And I'm going to make my case. I'm going to be looking at 3-star and below reviews on this. I'm not going to pay attention to the 4-star, 4.5, and 5-star plus, video game fanboys out there that want to claim this is the greatest movie of all time simply because they've played every Assassin's Creed game. And just as an aside, those games have gone to shit as well. But in any case, just judging this on a film basis, not knowing anything about the video games, which I can't say I don't know anything about the video games, but I know very little about their story. I do know something of the mechanics, etc. I'll say it's fair. I'm looking at this from the point of view of somebody that's not a big Assassin's Creed video game fanboy. I just barely know what it is and how it might be played, certainly. But let's take a look at the audience reviews and find out why this thing is just so damn rotten. Skipping down to the most recent review from 4 days ago, 1.5 stars. This could have worked way better in series form because as it is, it feels joyless and empty. I agree 100%. This felt completely empty, pointless, joyless, very drab, almost depressing. But if I called it depressing, I would be putting it into an emotional category. I would be saying that it generated some kind of emotion in me. So I won't say depressing because it just didn't generate any kind of emotion in me. So it's not even depressing. It's just empty. Yes, very empty, joyless. If I had to put a star review on this, I would say 0.5 star because a movie was made and people got paid. Michael Fassbender certainly got paid, but I'm not sure that's fair. I'm not sure he got paid the fair amount. I hope it was a very small amount he got paid because there's no joy to be found in this. I agree 100%. Now, this movie also features Jeremy Irons. It has some other faces I recognize, but not that are really big actors. This pretty much is a Michael Fassbender and Jeremy Irons vehicle. That's just the way it is. That's the way it was shot to be. So everybody else that was in it, yes, some of their faces are recognizable, but I'm not going to bring all their names up because I think they're very forgettable and they could have been replaced with anybody else, certainly in this very empty movie. Now, my first thing on my list on this, why this is so bad, why I just couldn't get into it, why I felt nothing, is primarily because it starts out and we are in we're in 1492. We're in the year, it actually lists it as the year in 1492 in Spain. Now, I don't know a lot about the history of, how much of this area of the world was controlled by Muslims and how much was controlled by Castilian Spain and etc. My history isn't really great on that, But in this movie, it kind of mixes it up and makes it a little wishy-washy. There are Arabic characters, and there are, Castilian Spanish characters speaking what I would imagine is pretty much modern Spanish. I don't know how accurate that is or not, but in any case, the disturbing part of this to me was that it chose to put all of that in Spanish, and put subtitles, and the movie is a little bit too fast-paced. Even in the dialogue, in scenes that are supposed to slow down a bit, there's still a lot of things happening, and you have to pay attention to these things. The movie wants you to visually, and at the same time, it expects you to try to translate this into English by reading the subtitles. Now, if you're a modern day Spanish speaker, I'm sure that this came across fine to you, understandably, but not only do I think this is a fail because you're putting modern Spanish in a time period which you would not have had that modern Spanish like we have today, and I'm pretty certain I'm right on that, but you're expecting somebody like myself that's not a native Spanish speaker to keep up with that, which is fine, but in a movie that doesn't give you a chance to keep up with that. So a lot of the dialogue, I would have had to have rewound it and watched it again at home to figure out that I didn't miss anything. And, well, I can say that, the movie is just so pointless that really you don't miss anything. But if I did want to understand all the dialogue, I wouldn't have been able to do that in the theater because there's just not enough time for me to read those words and pay attention to everything visually. It just didn't work. It was very off-putting, and I couldn't get into it for that reason. And then on top of that, not only are we in 1492 Spain with Spanish being spoken, but before we even leave that quite, we're actually introduced to a rock music soundtrack that's talking about cars and highways and etc. While we're actually still haven't quite left that 1492 Spain scenery, it doesn't work. It's very jarring. It's off-putting. You can't suspend your disbelief. It doesn't make any sense. Now, I knew this was based on a video game, of course, so I kind of gave it the benefit of the doubt the first time it did that at the very beginning, but it didn't get better from there. Every time it went back to the old 1492 Spain or wherever it was, it would just do the same stuff again, and you had long, boring scenes that were chock full of CGI that was kind of effective, but at the same time it was very smoky and gray and washed out, and the camera and the director seemed very obsessed with long sweeping overhead aerial shots of everything from a eagle or a hawk's point of view. And I know this is some kind of callback to a mechanic in the video game, but as a film this doesn't work. It makes the whole thing look like it's fake, and it's very smoky and washed out. And then the scenes where the action takes place, they're very long and boring, and even for a video game this would be considered very boring. You would have much more entertainment just watching a stream on Twitch of somebody playing one of the Assassin's Creed games. It's far more entertaining than what you see in this film. So even on a video game basis, this movie fails. It's not exciting at all. It really isn't. And it's just jarring. You're all over the place. Like within the first few minutes of this, you're in 3 different scenes. You're in 3 totally different environments, disconnected by not only centuries, but by thousands and thousands of miles. And you're kind of left wondering what the hell is going on. Now, I kind of followed what was going on because I understand what happened in the first and second video games. I understand the concept. But if I didn't know anything about that concept from the video games, like if I went into this just totally cold as just a film goer looking for a good film experience, I would have been left wondering what the fuck is going on here. It would have been a complete fail. The only reason I could kind of, I could kind of put up with it was because I do know how the first and second Assassin's Creed games, I know how the story goes. But without that, wow, this would have been totally rotten. I wouldn't have been able to even tell what was going on. And it's like the director didn't attempt to make up for that. Like, he knew he was making a video game adaptation, but he didn't account for people that just aren't fanboys of the video game. This is a complete fail. You're not going to... I don't care how many fanboys of this video game there are. They're not the ones that are going into the theaters and paying money to see this thing. They're at home. They're putting all their money largely into actual video game consoles and video games and PCs, graphics cards to play these video games, that's where their disposable income is going. It's not going into the big, ticket sales at the cinema. So this director made a big mistake thinking that he could just fan service video game fanboys, and that was going to make this movie a success. Obviously, this movie wasn't a success because the budget, I don't know what the budget was, but Rotten Tomatoes shows that this grossed about $54 million. I just take a look at this and say, there's no way they made this for $54 million. This is a financial loss. So I hope the director enjoyed his stupidity. I hope the studio enjoyed the stupidity there too, putting all the money into this and then just ignoring actual film goers. Maybe if this were going to be released, just be a PlayStation or Xbox release, it might have worked, but still, that budget, $54 million, yeah, this is just a loser all the way around. There's no way this could have been a winner. So let's get into some more actual audience reviews and find out what other flaws we have beyond what I just said were the major ones that didn't work for me. Half a star, November 30, 2019. The storytelling is intentionally obtuse to its own detriment, a slow trudge exasperated by poor writing and occasional over-the-top scenes that are too silly to be considered dramatic, a waste of brilliant cast. Yeah, everybody in this is capable of so much, but they don't do too much. I mean, Michael Fassbender, I love him in a lot of things. Like, I like his performances. I actually really enjoyed his performance as the cybernetic android in the Prometheus and the Alien Covenant films. I mean, I don't think those are good films, but I thought his performance was fantastic, and I really enjoyed him in the X-Men films. Even the ones that weren't bad, it wasn't because of his performance. But this he didn't have anything to do here. Like, most of the time he just did a lot of standing around and staring at other characters, and in fact a lot of the characters in this spent a lot of their screen time, a lot of their running time, just staring at each other across smoky environments in modern times and in ancient times, and it was completely boring. It was supposed to be dramatic, I guess, watching characters just stare a lot at each other, but it wasn't, and it didn't have hardly any dialogue. I mean, the most amount of dialogue in this, it was misused. It didn't accomplish anything with the plot, and then most of the actual actors weren't speaking most of the time. Like I said, they were just doing a whole lot of staring and standing, and a lot of standing. You would think in a video game, an action video game, and this is supposed to be like that, you would have a lot of action, but there isn't that much action. There's a lot of CGI for setting up set pieces. There's a lot of aerial views of things that aren't really that great or exciting, but the actual action, there's very little of that. Like I said, you're getting much more just watching a Twitch streamer play these games. It was very disappointing on the action front. Just a whole lot of people in costumes standing in places, trying to look epic and trying to look serious and stare at each other. I mean, come on. This is a complete fail. Here's the 3-star review from November 10, 2019. I'm going to read it, but let's see what else we can find here. In 1492, Andalusia, during the Granada War, Aguilar de Nurja, Michael Fassbender, is accepted into the Assassin's Brotherhood. He is assigned to protect Prince Ahmed de Granada from the Knights Templar. In 1986, adolescent Calum Cal Lynch, Michael Fassbender, finds his mother killed by his father, Joseph Brendan Gleeson, a modern-day assassin, gunman led by Alan Riken, Jeremy Irons, CEO of the Templars. Let me just stop. This reviewer, he's going to write up this big giant synopsis and, list who the cast are and what their roles are, but there's no point to it because everything he's just written there that I had trouble actually reading through out loud, you don't get that from the movie. It's just a whole hell of a lot of what the hell's going on here. This, I guess if you really understand all the details and character names from the video game, you would know all of this, but the movie, for you to piece this together, what this reviewer just wrote in this paragraph here, for you to just piece that together accurately, you would have had to go through at least half of the film's runtime to get all of those names right and everything, because it shows you all these characters, but it really gets around to explaining how they're relevant to anything. And, knowing how the video game goes, I kind of had it pieced together in my head. But for somebody that wasn't a video game fan, that didn't know what Assassin's Creed was about, the premise of it, wow, you wouldn't have any idea who these people are or what they're trying to do. It's a complete fail. I don't even want to read through that again or try. Half a star, November 1, 2019. This movie foolishly chooses to focus on the uninteresting part from the Assassin's Creed games. Unfortunately, I cannot forget this movie due to the utter travesty that it is. I largely agree with it. I'm going to forget it though. I don't know why this guy isn't. Maybe he's more into the games and it was more offensive to him. But no, this is forgettable to me. Like if I had watched this more than a week ago, I would have already forgotten things about it. But I wrote things down. Yeah, it has like these action set pieces in it that are like they appear to be taken from Assassin's Creed, but yeah, they also appear to be taken from very boring parts of the game. I don't know why. You would think they would pick exciting things in the game to follow along with, but no, they didn't. They chose relatively bland and uninteresting parts of the game that you've seen in every other video game too. And they weren't relative to anything, like you couldn't relate to anything going on because you didn't know who the characters were that were jumping around and fighting each other and how they were related to each other and why. Like, for example, Michael Fassbender's character, he has to rescue this prince's son, uh, who I guess is a Moor of some type. And yeah, you know that, but you don't understand why he has to rescue the son and if the son's dad is a good guy or a bad guy or why this is important to anything in the story. Even I didn't understand this, and I understood the premise of the video game, Assassin's Creed, but I didn't understand exactly why I should care about what the hell was going on in this film. The movie didn't make it clear at all. I was just left wondering, well, what's the point of all this action? And the action was boring on top of it. October 14th, 2019, 1 star, worst movie of all time. I wouldn't say of all time, but it's in the running, that's for sure. 3 stars, October 7, 2019. The movie stops when it should have started. Yeah, the movie just ends. Like it doesn't end like in the traditional way where the plot is resolved or there's a climax and the villain's defeated. No, 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 no. It ends like it's just like something that's setting up a trilogy or something, and you're not supposed to actually get any resolution and conclusion until like part 2 or 3, and it ends like that, and it looks like a straight up attempt to make some kind of Assassin's Creed trilogy or something. Maybe to make as many movies as there are installments of the game, and there's so many installments of the game that, oh, I just shudder to imagine if they thought they were going to make like 6 or 7 of these things. It would be a disaster because, yes, this thing just stops like it's part 1, and you're left wondering why you sat through it, and it doesn't deliver any kind of conclusion or any kind of theme or message. Not at all. There's no message, there's no theme, there's nothing to get out of this. You just watched a lot of people do things, and you watched a lot of expensive set pieces and CGI, and you're just wondering, was there a point to all of this? There wasn't. It was just like the point was to get you to be excited for Assassin's Creed 2, the Destiny Continues, or whatever the hell it's supposed to be called. And I doubt they're going to make another one because this was a flop, I'm pretty sure. But if they are, well, I'll be talking about it here. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be any better than this one. 1.5 stars, August 30, 2019. This movie should not exist. Half a star. I cannot believe Ubisoft confirmed the plot of this movie. To me, it felt like the video game company Ubisoft really had nothing to do with the movie. Now, maybe they did. They certainly licensed the Assassin's Creed characters and whatnot to be in this movie. Yes, they definitely had that to do with it. But to me, as an audience goer, it just felt like this really had no serious involvement with the video game studio or the video game makers because, yeah, it's like it was licensed by Ubisoft, but then Ubisoft like just didn't have any involvement with it at that point. It felt like that because as somebody that's played like or I haven't played it all the way through, but I've played much of the first Assassin's Creed back in the day. It felt like this had very little to do with it, other than it was set with that opening premise, and the characters were largely characters taken from that. It's a complete fail. It kind of reminds me of, a lot of those 1980s and 90s Stephen King novels that were made into movies where even though Stephen King participated in a lot of them, or he was on the set, nobody paid attention to him because they were all bombs and they were all really worse than the source material. And it almost feels like if Ubisoft did participate in this, that they're not very competent. They should just stick to the video games, and they've had flops too. Don't forget, Ubisoft has had a lot of flops in recent years, and there have been some rather floppish Assassin's Creed games from what I hear out there. So anyway, 2 stars, August 3rd, 2019. I really wanted this movie to be good, but despite the good cast and the solid story and structure, it's pretty dumb and boring. It's funny or sad because the Prince of Persia movie, it's a better AC movie than this movie. I agree. I've seen Prince of Persia. I wouldn't say it's a great movie, but I remember it. It's more memorable than this. And I wouldn't say it's completely irredeemable. And I also just barely remember playing the Prince of Persia game itself. And I'll say, yes, just right off the top of my head, Prince of Persia is a better film than this. And that's sad because I'm 100% sure that the budget of this film is much greater than that of that old Prince of Persia movie. But yeah, I agree 100%, but not with 2 stars. This is a half a star movie. Half a star, no higher. 1 star, July 30, 2019. I left after 45 minutes of pointless and extremely boring scenes. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I'm sorry. If you saw this in the theater and you were a fan of Assassin's Creed, wow, yeah, I could see you just walking out after 45 minutes. I'm surprised your eyeballs aren't tired too from trying to keep up with not only the Spanish and the subtitles, but also all the visual stuff at the same time. Yeah, I can only imagine. Thank God I saw this on, a cable channel. Thank God. 1.5 stars, July 13, 2019. Such a fine group of actors, but such a messy script and storyline. 1 star, July 10, 2019. Such a waste of time for Fox, even for me. Well, now I think it's actually Disney, so maybe Disney will do us a favor and just slam this into that fabled, that old Disney vault, and we don't have to hear from this for a long time, hopefully. I'm not going to subscribe to Disney Plus, not anytime in the foreseeable future, for a lot of different reasons. So if this becomes something on Disney Plus, I won't have to worry about seeing this for long. This will disappear from my site. June 23rd, 2019, 1.5 stars. Not gonna lie, I was so bored during this movie that I ended up falling asleep for the last 20 to 30 minutes of the movie in the theater. The storyline was jumbled, it took itself too seriously, and the characters were bland as all get out. I couldn't tell you a thing about this movie other than it was based on a video game, so that's just from a film goer's perspective. They fell asleep in the theater. I could agree with that. I'll say another thing about the difference between this as a video game and this as a movie. Let's just talk about the robot arm that is attached to Michael Fassbender's character while he's in the simulation. In the video game, it might work if it's like that. It's like kind of a belt around your waist that's holding you on this big mechanical arm. I don't think that's what it exactly was in the video game. It's been a while since I played the first game. But in the real world, I'm sorry, that just doesn't physically work. If you were attached to this arm, this crane arm thing, this hydraulic arm, like Michael Fassbender was in this film, and it had you around the waist by whatever belt that was holding you at the waist, whether it was solid or fabric, or it didn't matter. In the film, it was like a metal type belt that was around Michael Fassbender's waist. If it was like holding you up in the air like that for any length of time, you would be in the hospital from that, because your body isn't made for that. And this movie shows him moving around and doing all these intense action performances in the air while he's just suspended by this belt that's around his waist, this metal belt on the end of this robot arm. I'm sorry, but your spine wouldn't be working too well. Neither would your hips after you went through that experience the first time, much less doing this time after time after time to your body. You would be in a wheelchair after that. But in this film, that's realistic to have people in a machine like this and they're going to walk after that. No, I'm afraid that's not the way the human body's designed. You'd be in a wheelchair after that, I'm afraid. That's one big stupid fail in this. Now, in a video game, you can hand wave that away, right? Because it's a video game, it's not the real world. But again, I'm pretty certain that's not exactly how it worked in the video game. But let's move on. June 23rd, 2019. No, June 19th. 2.5 stars. It all gets a bit ridiculous during the final act, but Assassin's Creed does at least know exactly what kind of film it is. I'm not sure it does know what kind of film it is. Well, does it know it's just another one of a series of bad video game adaptations in the modern world? If it's trying to be one of those, then it succeeds. Because it's like almost every video game adaptation that comes out has to be a fail. They all have to be stupid. And conversely, the same is true. Almost every video game based on a film, a successful film or not, is also stupid and disappointing. So it's like it doesn't work either way most of the time, and it's always stupid. It's like it doesn't matter if you go from film to video game to film. You can roll the dice and you can bet that most of the time you'll be correct, that it's going to come up as a fail. And this is no different. Now, if this was made by somebody that expected no better than the same thing to happen, that this would be a video game fail, video game adaptation fail, then yes, this movie succeeds. It sets out to be that, and it knows what it is. Otherwise, no, 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 no. That could be, though. Maybe the producers of this knew what it was going to be, and I don't know, maybe they thought they'd make their money back in China. Will the Chinese actually put this into the black? I don't know, because it's clearly a financial loss just by the US box office. So anyway, 1 star, May 19th. I like Fassbender, but he can't save this film. Bad script, constant switch between present time and action time back in 1492, and average action make this a below average movie. One little gem, the final scene plays in the premier Grand Lodge of England, 1717 in London. Cool. Well, yes, I noticed that too. It's actually set in a real location in London, but that's not going to redeem anything in this film. It wouldn't matter if that happened or not. In any case, yes, 1492. Why would that figure? Well, this movie opened up in 1492, and I was thinking in the back of my head, oh, it's going to have something to do with Christopher Columbus. That's the obvious thing, right? Sure enough, at the end of the film, that's what it had to do with. This MacGuffin they were looking for, this, this almost alien device. It's actually said that it could be alien at one point in the film. This alien device, this alien piece of technology that is the original, biblical apple that Eve bit into from the Bible story of Adam and Eve. It is located in the tomb of Christopher Columbus. So, yeah, not a big surprise there where that was going. 1.5 stars, May 17, 2019. The actors needed to play the first game a few times, and the director needed a walkthrough. Does not translate to the screen well, in my opinion. You're being too kind. I think they knew exactly what the video game was about, and yet we still got this. I don't know. Maybe it was made for Chinese consumption. It didn't have Chinese actors. That wasn't a big thing. Like in other films, I can see all the Chinese actors. Like I'm going to do a review of Independence Day Resurgence. It's definitely made for a big China release. This wasn't. It didn't feel like that. So I don't know where they thought this was going to succeed. 2 stars, May 13th. They literally just had to follow the great story of the games, but instead they changed it and tried to add their different take on the story and the settings and the themes. There almost is no theme. That's the other problem. Yeah, you've got settings, and they put a lot of money into the settings, but there's no theme. It doesn't really add up to anything. It does have a biblical story reference, but it doesn't go anywhere with that. It has the Christopher Columbus stuff. It has, the Moorish type history in Spain, but it doesn't go anywhere with that. I'm not sure what this, there is no message. There's no theme here that I could connect. It's really quite a fail on that level. 1.5 star, May 11, 2019. If you read this, go play the games instead. Very disappointing adaptation. My recommendation isn't to go out and play the games instead. Actually, before you even do that, just go find somebody streaming one of the games and watch them play the game, and then you can decide if you like this at all before you even try to play the game. That's my advice. I don't know if somebody's streaming this on Twitch right now or somewhere else, but I'm sure there are YouTube videos showing people with gameplay of one or more or all of the games in this Assassin's Creed franchise. Go look those up first, then perhaps try to play the games. That's just my advice. 0.5 star, May 4th, 2019. Worst game adaptation since Max Payne, altering some essential things like the Animus just to bring more shallow action in the movie. For sure, Fassbender and Kurzel didn't understand the game. Yeah, there's no question. I'll take their word for it that the actual Animus, that mechanical arm that was in the movie, I'm pretty sure that's not the way it was in the game. I remember more of some kind of table or chamber they were in, but in any case. 0.5 star, April 26, 2019. They do not respect the source material. Oh, clearly, yeah. It's like they just knew it was going to be bad and they didn't care. I don't know. 2.5 stars, April 22nd, 2019. At the beginning, it was great, hell, fantastic, but as the movie progresses, the movie just gets repetitive, which is a shame, because the game has such a good backstory. If this movie had more flair, then I would have given a better review. You're being too kind still. Let's do one more fantastic page. 1.5 stars, April 18, 2019. Assassin's Creed started out very promising, but it spends too much time in the present instead of the past, which is the more interesting part of the movie. The subplot with Fassbender's father was half-assed, and the action sequences aren't even enjoyable, as they keep cutting between past and present very abruptly. Great cast, but it's a video game movie. Yeah, video game movies, 9 times out of 10, or maybe even more often than 9 out of 10 times, they're just complete fails and they're not good at all. What's on my list? Is there anything else on my list I haven't mentioned? Yeah, a lot of standing around and staring all through this film from beginning to end. I don't know why that's supposed to be. Oh, I almost forgot this, and this was my biggest nitpick before I even found a lot of other flaws. It seems like the music score here is very half-assed and cheap. Like they just didn't want to develop more than one theme song to use throughout the entire running time of the film. So, in a movie, a real big budget movie, you'll have up to maybe even 20 or more different scores that are assembled into the film and played at different times for different scenes. In this film, it's just the same damn repetitive score, almost as repetitive as a video game track. And it just plays from front to back through this entire movie where there's a score. And it's very annoying. It's not even nice. It's annoying and abrupt and jarring. And it just repeats itself over and over and over and over and over. And every time we cut back from present day to back in 1492, the same score starts up again with the same repetitive stuff again and again and again. And it's so annoying, and they never switch it up, and it never variates by much at all. It's worse than a video game. A video game has separate scores. A video game, especially something as large as Assassin's Creed, has a lot of different scored music in it for different places, for your boss battles, for your different settings, etc. This is just so cheap and stupid. It's like they had one score piece written and they just repeated it all throughout. And then sometimes in the modern settings, you'd get some jarring rock music thrown in that didn't work either. It was my worst thing. I wasn't 20 minutes into this film and I'm like, will it please stop? Will the violin strings or cello strings or whatever they are that just keep screeching back and forth, will they just please stop? Because they're just on a loop, repeating over and over and over. And the movie, the director, he thinks this is supposed to be exciting during all the boring action scenes. It's just the same repetitive loop of music playing over and over. no matter how many different settings of action, throughout all the action scenes, different scenes disconnected from each other in time and place, and the same repetitive loop of music playing the whole time, and it's very annoying. That was my biggest thing. The soundtrack was just shit in every way. Even the modern rock music just clashed in there at the wrong times, didn't belong there. Complete fail, but let me move on now that I've said my full piece on this. 1 star, March 16, 2019. Assassin's Creed really is mind-numbing film that wastes such a talented cast. Just like the game series, Assassin's Creed spends its time split between the past and the present by means of the Animus, and just like the game series, the past segments are much more interesting than those set in the present. The plot sees the Templars hunting down the Apple of Eden, using captured assassins and their descendants by forcing them into the Animus to relive their ancestors' pasts. Yeah, it's a plot summary, but believe me, this reviewer's eventually probably going to get around to saying that it's a shit movie. 1 star, I'll take his word. Such a long plot summary there. 2.5 stars, March 7, 2019. All in all, not a bad movie, but the ending was totally unsatisfying, and most of the side characters were just flat. Yeah, there were a lot of side characters inside the prison that wasn't supposed to be a prison. Early on, we end up in this prison environment where all the prisoners are basically being forced to relive their past lives through genetic memory stuff going on. It's the premise taken from Assassin's Creed, except many times during the film, the main character, Michael Fassbender, is told, "You're not in a prison. It's not a prison. It's not a prison. Believe me, it's not a prison. If you just cooperate, it's not a prison." But yet, it's a prison. It's a straight-up prison in every way, in every regard. If you didn't know anything else about the movie, if you just watched it and tried to judge what kind of thing they were in, it's a prison. But yet they keep telling Michael Fassbender it's not a prison while he's being imprisoned, and all the cliche prisoner things go on. The movie's like, it's really stupid like that. I almost thought they meant that as a comedy, but it's not delivered in a funny way. It's just logical nonsense in the movie. 2 stars, other than some impressive action sequences, this is another bad video game movie. Yep, yet another bad video game movie. 3 stars, January 28th. One time we'll try this movie only for gamers, or, that's bad English. I guess they're saying this movie is only for gamers. I think gamers would find it pretty bad. Like I said, I played the first Assassin's Creed most of the way through. I'm sorry, this is just bad. This is another bad video game adaptation. It's embarrassing. I hope Disney Plus locks this up and puts it in their vault, and I don't have to see it again, and I don't have to talk about it again, and I really hope there aren't sequels, and I really, really, really hope that this doesn't turn into a series on Disney Plus. But, I kind of actually mean that, sarcastically. I want to see this made into a series on Disney Plus. I want to see it done, and I want to see it fail, and I want to see everybody just rip it to shreds. That's how bad this thing is. It deserves to die. 43% on the audience score. 23% would be better. It would feel better to me. It would make me feel better. And I'm surprised the critics don't have this in the single-digit category. I don't know. Maybe they were a fan on the effects and care put into the 1492 time period. I don't know what it is. I don't know why they're in the double digits. I'm certainly not. So I will see you again on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.